The Russia-Ukraine war is now entering into a pretty critical phase as Moscow is ramping up the intensity of its attacks. The United States is mulling on supplying long-range cruise missiles, a move that could potentially and dramatically shift the war's trajectory. The Russian response has issued a pretty stern warning, including the potential threat of a nuclear retaliation, not for the first time in this war. Take a look at this report.
Russia's recent missile strikes are becoming increasingly deadly. A double missile attack in Poltava killed over 50 people and injured 200. This was followed by another devastating strike in Lviv that claimed 7 lives. The relentless Russian bombardment is pushing back Ukrainian troops from its eastern borders.
The enemy's goal in the Kursk region was to make us nervous, fuss, move troops from one area to another and stop our offensive in key areas, above all in Donbass, the liberation of which is our primary goal.
The intensifying strikes not only signal Moscow's escalated aggression, but also highlight the strain on Ukraine's air defenses that are struggling to counter the barrage. The stakes are set to rise further, with reports that the US is close to delivering long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine. These joint air-to-surface standoff missiles could transform the strategic landscape by allowing Ukraine to strike deep into Russian territory, targeting critical air bases and supply depots up to 300 kilometers inside Russia. With stealth capabilities, these missiles could force Russia to retreat from staging areas, complicating its logistical operations. In response, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has issued a stern warning to the US to not cross Russia's red lines. Lavrov accused Washington of losing sight of the mutual deterrence that had maintained a precarious balance between two nuclear powers since the Cold War, thus calling the situation dangerous. Russia's nuclear doctrine, last updated by Vladimir Putin in 2020, allows for the use of nuclear weapons if the state's existence is under threat. Recently, Moscow ramped up its nuclear rhetoric to deter Western support for Ukraine. As the West increases its support for Ukraine, Russia has indicated it may revise its nuclear doctrine, potentially lowering the threshold for its use of nuclear weapons, making the situation even more volatile. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in the Russia-Ukraine war, we're being joined by Mr. John Irath, who's a Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, is joining us live on this broadcast. Mr. Irath, thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us here on WION. And let me actually start off by asking you this. You know, this announcement that was made by Russia, that it is mulling on changing its nuclear doctrine in the middle of this war. What do you think is actually happening here? Why has Moscow now announced that it wants to change its nuclear doctrine at a time when it is fighting against Ukraine?
I think it is part of a very consistent pattern that we have seen from Moscow for the last 2 years and more. When there is possibility of additional military assistance going to Ukraine, Russia always issues these sorts of threats to remind Western countries that additional assistance to Ukraine could raise the possibility of nuclear war and to deter actions of that sort. So this is one more in a long series of these kinds of threats that we have seen coming out of the Kremlin.
Now, within the United States of America, there's been a lot of back and forth about the kind of weapons that the United States now needs to send to Ukraine. And one of the weapons that is being talked about a lot are these JASSM ballistic missiles, which have a much longer range than the missiles that have been supplied to Ukraine so far. Do you think this is somehow is going to alter the Ukrainian war theater? Because the deeper Ukraine decides to strike into Russia, the more ferocious would be the Russian response.
The missiles would be useful for striking particular military targets, command centers, logistics hubs, things like that. They are not war-winning weapons by themselves in military terms, but what they would do is demonstrate for Russians that Ukraine has the capability to bring the war to Russia, that Ukraine is still fighting back, and that the war is a reality for everyday Russia, hundreds of miles from the Ukrainian border. So the effect would be more one of morale than of military.
Absolutely, indeed, Mr. Ram. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us and getting us that perspective here in WION.
You're very welcome.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.